It's February 12th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment trial. The seventh hearing on Tuesday focused on whether Yoon adhered to or skipped formal procedures to trigger the December martial law order. The final hearing is scheduled for Thursday, with the court likely to summon more witnesses and extend the trial dates. U.S. President Donald Trump further pushed his plans to take over the Gaza Strip and move its residents to Jordan and other Arab nations during talks with Jordanian King Abdullah II. And the reciprocal tariffs by Trump are on the way, on top of the 25% tariff on steel and aluminum imports, with questions on whether countries that have free trade agreements with the U.S., like South Korea, will be affected. Was the martial law on December 3rd last year legally proclaimed? That was the key question at President Yoon's seventh impeachment trial hearing on Tuesday. Our Oh Soo-young starts us off.
President Yoon Suk-yeol's martial law was ill-advised but lawfully proclaimed, according to officials who were present at his office on the night of December 3rd. This came at Yoon's seventh impeachment trial hearing as more witnesses were summoned on Tuesday, amid claims by some senior cabinet ministers that Yoon had bypassed the cabinet procedures required by the Constitution before declaring the decree. Former Interior Minister Lee Sang-min said otherwise. While admitting a cabinet meeting hadn't been called in advance, he said the 7 or so members who initially gathered at the president's office waited for the 11-member quorum to be filled, after which Yoon spoke briefly before proclaiming martial law on live TV. Lee said he believes those present considered themselves at a cabinet meeting. National Security Advisor Shin Won-sik also said he was told by the president's chief of staff that a cabinet meeting was ongoing when he later arrived at the scene. Both Lee and Shin said while they, along with other ministers and secretaries, tried to dissuade the president from declaring martial law, they understood the political context of the situation. On this, Yoon took the chance to speak, reiterating his claim that the opposition Democratic Party has sabotaged the administration with a series of impeachments and a major budget cut.
제가 대통령으로서 야당이 아무리 저를 공격하더라도 왜 대화와 타협을 안 하겠습니다. 야당을 설득해서 뭐를 해보려고 한 건데 이 문명국가에서 도대체 현대사에서 볼 수 없는 이런 줄타내기라고 하는 것은 이거는 대단히 악의적인 거고 이거는 대화 타협을 하겠다는 것이 아니라 그냥 이 정권을 파괴시키는 것이 우리의 목표라고 하는 것을 명확히 보여주는 겁니다.
The hearing also addressed the election fraud allegations raised by Yoon as a pretext for declaring martial law. Former intelligence official Baek Jong-ok said the National Election Commission service, upon inspection, seemed highly vulnerable to external attack and could potentially trigger a social crisis. But he wouldn't comment on election fraud, saying the service hadn't been examined for such irregularities. Secretary General of the Election Commission Kim Yong-bin said he hadn't been made aware of the false voting ballots mentioned by Yoon's legal team and insisted regular inspections were conducted.
Given the conflicting narratives and discrepancies with previous statements, experts say the court is likely to summon more witnesses, inevitably extending the trial. While the court is focused on delivering a speedy verdict, the president's lawyers have continued to raise objections to the trial proceedings.
Yoon himself opposed the court's decision to accept investigation records as evidence, arguing it is crucial to hear out witness statements in person. However, the opposition has called for a quick end to the trial, saying the evidence is out there.
Our patience is wearing thin. How much longer must we put up with the baseless conspiracy theories about election fraud? There's already been enough consideration given to the respondent through this week's witness examination. We hope for a swift conclusion to the proceedings.
The court on Tuesday rejected Yoon's request to summon Prime Minister Han Duck-soo as a witness, deeming it unnecessary. The next and final hearing for now is scheduled for Thursday with 3 witnesses to testify. Oseong, Arirang News.
U.S. President Donald Trump reiterated his plan to take over the Gaza Strip, this time to King Abdullah II. As Trump pressured Jordan to accept refugees from Gaza, the Jordanian king offered to take in 2,000 sick Palestinian children. Lee Seung-jae reports.
U.S. President Donald Trump held talks with King Abdullah II of Jordan at the White House on Tuesday, where Trump reiterated his plan to take over and develop the Gaza Strip. As the two leaders discussed ending the Israel-Hamas war, Trump also pressured Jordan to take in Palestinian refugees. This comes as Trump suggested Monday that he would withhold U.S. funding from Jordan and Egypt to persuade the Middle Eastern countries to accept Palestinians from Gaza. While King Abdullah II did not say Jordan would be accepting the Palestinian refugees, he offered to take in 2,000 sick Palestinian children.
I think one of the things that we can do right away is take 2,000 children that are either cancer children or in very ill state to Jordan as quickly as possible, and then wait for, I think, the Egyptians to present their plan on how we can work with the president to work on the Gaza challenges.
Trump showed appreciation for what he called a beautiful gesture, adding that Jordan, along with Egypt, will see great progress moving forward.
What you just said, 2,000 children with cancer or other problems, and that's really a beautiful gesture. That's really good, and we appreciate it. And we'll be working on the rest with Egypt. I think you're going to see some great progress. I think with Jordan, you're going to see some great progress. There's 3 of us, and we'll have some others helping, and we're going to have some others at a very high level helping, and the whole thing will come.
While the Jordanian king did not agree to take in the displaced Gazans during their talks, Trump said both Jordan and Egypt would ultimately agree to house the refugees. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The Gaza ceasefire deal has been called into question, with Hamas accusing Israel of violating their truce. And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is now threatening to resume the war. Let's turn to Professor Robert Lawrence for more. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you for having me.
So Hamas pointing to Israel for its violation of key provisions of the agreement. But doesn't Israel have its own suspicions about the rationale behind Hamas's delay?
Yes, well, on Monday, Abu Ubaidah, the spokesperson for the Qassam brigades, the armed wing of Hamas, said that it was going to release the delay of hostages planned for Saturday until further notice due to Israeli non-compliance with the terms of the agreement. Hamas is arguing that the delay, they're delaying the displaced persons back into northern Gaza, and that those people are being fired upon by shells and gunfire when they're going. And they're also arguing that Israel is not allowing relief trucks to come in to the Gaza Strip, while they're saying that Hamas has fulfilled all of its duties under its obligations. So, Israel denies this. Israel says that, or they likely see some ulterior motives here. Firstly, a Hamas delegation led by Mohammed Darwish went to Tehran over the weekend and met with Ayatollah Khomeini, President Pezeshkian, and the parliament speaker Ghalibaf. So right after they got back is when this announcement was made. So a lot of Israelis are suspecting Iranian involvement. Secondly, Israel recognizes that Hamas has a decreasing leverage as it continues to return hostages, especially the female hostages. So it's likely trying to hurry Israel to the negotiating table for phase 2 while they still have some leverage. It is important to note that Hamas made this announcement 5 days prior to the Saturday deadline.
Right.
So I don't think that they're trying to kill the deal. If they wanted to kill the deal, they could have just not shown up or not delivered on Saturday.
Well, Israel is determined to take actions. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu now threatening to end the deal unless Hamas really lets go of those captives by this weekend. Do you think he'll actually do that?
It's tough to say. There's a chorus of voices coming out of Israel right now. Former Minister of National Security Ben-Gvir and the Finance Minister Smotrich they're looking for kind of a fire and brimstone type reaction, all-out war. Opposition leader Lapid, along with the family members of the hostages, want the hostages returned, with the utmost priority and the utmost urgency. So Netanyahu is on the hot seat again. As far as I know, as of this morning, I believe that the Israeli cabinet unanimously passed a decision to reinstate full warfare if the hostages aren't returned by noon. So, I think as far as what will actually happen, it's probably best not to get ahead of ourselves. We'll wait to see if calmer minds prevail and if some better negotiation can happen. It's not inevitable, but certainly if the hostages aren't returned by noon, I think it's very likely that a resumption and an escalation of fighting will ensue.
Okay, well, Trump also had to comment on this. Now, he said Israel should cancel the ceasefire and that all hell is going to break out. What do you think he meant by this?
Yeah, well, in the press conference with the King of Jordan earlier this morning, he was directly asked about what this meant, and he was very intentionally vague. He seemed particularly irritated by the condition of the 3 hostages that were released last week, and he implied that patience is running out with this. The implication of this type of rhetoric, I think, is the same as since he had been elected to office. He's differentiating his approach from the previous administrations. So when the Biden administration, often publicly called for restraint, Trump's all bets are off type warning is implying that the misery in the Gaza Strip will deteriorate into something worse if Hamas doesn't adhere to the plan. So the obvious assumption is that this would come in the form of an escalation in kinetic warfare on Hamas. However, before he came into office, he did talk about, hell breaking loose all over the Middle East. So it'll be interesting to see if things don't go well on Saturday, what the scope of this reaction will be. He might have different targets in mind, like axis of resistance forces in the region.
Well, some analysts point out that Trump's call for ethnic cleansing in Gaza is front and center in the ceasefire agreement breakdown. I'd like to hear your take on this.
Well, Hamas didn't directly blame the president's plan for the Gaza Strip for the delay. But senior Hamas officials, one particular named Sami Abu Zuri, implied as much when he said that Trump has to remember that threatening language has no value and it only complicates the matter. Certainly a lot of Palestinians did not care for this proposal very much. I mean, I don't think it's going to be very popular in the Gaza Street. But time will tell with that. It's still difficult to ascertain exactly what Trump's plan is. He said there would be no need for boots on the ground, but then, any significant U.S. presence in the Gaza Strip is going to be a big target. He said he would buy it, then he said there was nothing to buy. His cabinet member said that it would be a temporary relocation, and then he said that Palestinians won't be able to return. So there are a lot of details that need to be clarified. Anybody watching him can see that his rhetoric, especially in the beginning of a negotiation, doesn't always match his intention.
Right.
I think he's probably trying to move the goalposts and get regional actors to take a bigger stake in the conflict and try to avoid, a repetition of the cycle of violence. So I think this transactional approach doesn't sit well with a lot of people in international relations. But I think it's more likely a negotiation strategy than an actual policy initiative. The reality of actually having an American takeover of the Gaza Strip seems a bridge too far. But he's a tough guy to predict, so we'll see.
Well, lots of things are still up in the air, and I know we have to wait until the weekend to see what happens. But would you say Hamas may be wondering if it's even worth engaging in phase 2 of the ceasefire talks?
Well, I think Hamas wants to get back as many of their people as they can, and they want to try to secure a permanent ceasefire in phase 2. However, Israel and the U.S. have both continued to insist that Hamas won't be able to rule the Gaza Strip after the conflict. So obviously Hamas is probably concerned about the sincerity of negotiating with both the Americans and the Israelis. This is kind of an existential threat for Hamas. So their best move, I think that the hostages are their best leverage right now. So they want to use those and try to get Israel to return to negotiations on phase 2 as quick as possible. So, they're encountering diminishing returns on as the number of hostages lessen, and that fanfare that they had, with the hostage release kind of rallies is losing momentum. So they want to implement phase 2, but they want to do it quickly, cautiously, and with guarantees. And I'm assuming that they'll do so with contingency plans for if everything falls through and military conflict resumes.
Alrighty, Professor Lawrence, thank you so much for joining us this morning. You have a wonderful day.
My pleasure. You too. Bye-bye.
On top of the 25% steel and aluminum tariffs, the U.S. is set to issue reciprocal tariffs, with its leader claiming it's an effort to create fairer trade conditions. Our Choi Min-jung has more.
The U.S. is anticipated to announce plans to impose reciprocal tariffs on other countries as early as Tuesday or by Wednesday at the latest.
I'll be announcing probably Tuesday or Wednesday at a news conference reciprocal tariffs, and very simply, it's if they charge us, we charge them.
Trump claims that introducing reciprocal tariffs will create a fairer trading environment for the U.S. In theory, the U.S. would apply identical levies on imports from a specific country that the country imposes on American exports. Pundits say one of the most significant countries impacted by reciprocal tariffs would be India. In 2022, India imposed an average tariff of 9.5% on American products, significantly higher than the 3% rate the U.S. imposed on Indian goods. Europe will also likely face reciprocal tariffs. The U.S. imposes a 2.5% tariff on cars from BMW, Mercedes-Benz, and Volkswagen, while the EU charges 10% on American auto imports. On top of that, there's the question of how Trump will handle value-added tax in the EU, which averages at over 20%.
Well, the European Union charges us 20% plus a VAT tax, called a VAT tax, very similar. and it costs us an absolute fortune. We are treated so badly.
If Trump takes a country-level approach, countries with which the U.S. has free trade agreements, including South Korea, are likely to remain unaffected, as most products are tariff-free. However, given that South Korea posted a record trade surplus with the U.S. last year, there's a possibility that President Trump could target this issue. Nonetheless, the White House has indicated that reciprocal tariffs may not be implemented immediately this week, as Trump focuses on reviewing existing tariffs. Choi Min-dang, Arirang News.
Now, in the meantime, there are just a month left before Trump's 25% tariffs come into force. And South Korea is looking to make a breakthrough by pushing for last-minute talks with the U.S. Our Kim Jong-sil has the details.
The South Korean government is on high alert as the U.S. moves forward with a 25% tariff on imported steel and aluminum, a move that could hit key industries hard. Following the U.S. announcement, top officials in Seoul met on Tuesday to discuss response measures.
While we are concerned about the decline in profitability for our industry, we also see opportunities in a fair, competitive environment. We will work closely with the industry to strengthen its competitiveness.
The government said it will also push for last-minute negotiations.
With some time left until March 12th, we will actively engage in negotiations with the U.S. to ensure our interests are fully reflected.
South Korea had previously faced export limits instead of tariffs, but with the new policy, those restrictions will also be lifted on March 12th.
From calculations done in a report by an analyst in Citibank, this should affect Korea's GDP, reduce Korea's GDP by 0.1 to 0.2%. But because the quota has been removed, the damage from tariffs should be less than 0.2% of the GDP.
With Trump hinting at tariffs on autos and semiconductors, experts warn negotiations must be strategic.
Because Trump has threatened many other tariffs on other goods such as automobiles and pharmaceuticals, for full negotiation, we should wait until we know exactly what range of goods that U.S. will put tariffs on.
Officials say they will closely monitor U.S. trade moves and coordinate responses with Japan and the EU. With time running out, South Korea faces tough choices to protect its export-driven economy. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
U.S. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell has stated that the central bank is not rushing to lower interest rates, describing the economy as strong. Powell told lawmakers on Monday that the U.S. economy is strong overall and has made significant progress over the past 2 years, particularly in labor market conditions. He added that while inflation has moved closer to the Fed's 2% target, it remains somewhat elevated. He cautioned against reducing policy strains too quickly, as doing so could increase the demand and push prices higher, reversing progress on inflation. Now, subtly referencing the Trump administration's latest import taxes, Powell said the Fed's policy is well positioned to deal with the risks and uncertainties facing the U.S. South Korea added 5 medals at the 2025 Winter Asian Games in Harbin on Tuesday, including its first-ever gold medal in biathlon. Yekaterina Abakumova, a Russian-born biathlete who became a naturalized South Korean in 2017, finished first in the women's 7.5-kilometer biathlon sprint event, giving Team Korea their 12th gold medal overall. The top podium finish marks the first time a South Korean has won a Winter Asian Games gold in the sport. South Korea also finished with 2 silver and 2 bronze in speed skating on the day, with Lee Na-hyun winning her 4th medal in Harbin. On Wednesday, the women's figure skating event kicks off with its short program, with the South Korean women's curling team looking to continue its success, this time against the Philippines. South Korea is second in the medal standings with 12 gold, 12 silver, and 11 bronze for a total of 35 medals.
Good morning, I'm Choi Ji-hee, and this is The World Now. At the recent AI Action Summit in Paris, the United States and the United Kingdom declined to sign a declaration aimed at promoting open and inclusive artificial intelligence, setting them apart from 60 other nations. On Tuesday, the U.S. and the UK chose not to join the list of signatories of the Statement on Inclusive and Sustainable Artificial Intelligence. The statement had received support from countries including France, China, and India. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance expressed concerns that strict regulations might hinder innovation, stressing the nation's preference for pro-growth AI policies. The UK government cited concerns about national security and global governance as the reasons for not signing the declaration. Contrastingly, French President Emmanuel Macron said, "We need these rules for AI to move forward." OpenAI CEO Sam Altman says he has rejected Elon Musk's offer to acquire the firm behind ChatGPT, intensifying the ongoing rift between the two figures. On Tuesday, a consortium of investors led by Elon Musk proposed to buy the nonprofit that runs OpenAI for approximately $97.4 billion in an attempt to take control of its research and strategic decisions. However, OpenAI CEO Sam Altman declined the offer, saying it was ridiculous and that it was not for sale. Instead, he suggested buying the social platform X, which is owned by Musk. Musk, who co-founded OpenAI in 2015, left the organization in 2018 and has since been highly critical of its direction. His ongoing legal battle with OpenAI claims that the company abandoned its founding mission by partnering with Microsoft and is shifting toward a for-profit model. Now to the U.S. state of Arizona, where one person died and at least 3 others were injured on Monday afternoon local time when a private jet collided with another aircraft. The private jet, owned by Vince Neil, the lead singer of rock band Motley Crue, collided with a parked plane as it was landing at Scottsdale Municipal Airport. The arriving jet reportedly veered off the runway before crashing. 2 pilots and 2 passengers were on board Neil's jet, and 1 person was in the parked jet. 3 people were taken to hospital for treatment. Neil was not on the plane. Finally, to Iraq, where the country's foreign minister on Tuesday announced the successful recovery of Iraqi artifacts from Japan and Switzerland. Speaking at the Iraqi National Museum, the minister said the historic items, including a statue of the sun god, rare murals, and some textured paintings, date back to ancient Mesopotamia and the Assyrian civilization. He said that some of the recovered artifacts had been loaned to Japan in the 1970s, adding that the returned items are not just objects, but integral parts of Iraq's national identity. Iraq's government has been using diplomatic channels to recover items stolen during years of conflict in the country.
Yesterday's weather was such a treat after all the bitter chill. But today we're having another round of wintry weather. A mix of rain and snow is expected in much of the country. Central regions could see up to 8 centimeters of snowfall, mainly in the morning. Parts of Chungcheongbuk-do and Gyeongsang-Puk-do provinces could see 3 to 8 centimeters of snow throughout the day today. Now, southern provinces could see rain due to milder temperatures. Gyeongsang-Namdo and Jeollanam-do province could see 30 to 40 millimeters of rainfall. It's Daeboreum today, when we can see the first full moon of the new year under the lunar calendar. The moon rises at 5:46 p.m. and should be at its brightest at 10:53 here in Seoul. But checking out the full moon might not be easy due to cloudy skies. Meanwhile, highs in Seoul will be at 4, Busan at 12 degrees Celsius. Today's wet weather will not drop temperatures any further. In fact, we could have spring-like warmth from Friday, but it's messy out there today. Stay safe.
That is all we have for this morning. New Day at Arirang will be back tomorrow at the same time, 10 a.m. Korea time. Until then, goodbye.
How to survive in Korea. One room. So, you're surviving in Korea. If you've signed a contract for a one room, obviously you're a pro. But the real deal begins now. Step 1. Housewarming. No need to buy toilet paper, diffusers or hand soap. You'll get them soon enough as housewarming gifts. And some are bound to pile up. There's nothing better to serve your guests than milpaeyu nabe. If you have Korean friends coming over, don't forget the extra garlic. Step 2. Garbage disposal. With great power comes great responsibility. You've had a good time, so let's get to work. It might be tempting to sweep everything into a trash can, but you have to separate your garbage. Not bothered? Beware that negligence is punished with a fine or public humiliation. Step 3. Drying rack. You're excited to live alone in Korea, but the fate of these items, hanger, storage, or a hanger. Go get fresh coffee outside. Jogging doesn't cost anything, and nothing beats instant rice. But keep one item around so that you don't get too lonely. Step 4. Pros of living alone. No mum. Cons of living alone. No mum. A new towel doesn't magically appear. You have to do the laundry regularly. If anyone gives a towel as a souvenir, take it. Get rid of mold immediately. Don't be lazy with the vacuum cleaner. Housework is an endless affair. Overwhelmed? Give your mum a call and thank her for everything she's done. Did you survive in your one room? Wait, you have an unwanted visitor. Call someone you fancy. Could be the right person for the job.
Our lives are swept into a vortex of this intricately connected world. Providing an in-depth exploration of global security, diplomacy, economy, and culture to offer a unique international perspective. Embark on a global news journey with the Geovista today.
We're here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bring news just for you. It's Wednesday, February 12th here in Seoul. I'm Song Yujin, and welcome to News Generation. Joining us today is Chester Dainha.
Happy Wednesday, everyone.
Happy Wednesday.
Woo.
And Park Yoon.
Happy to be here.
Happy to have you. Now, both are here to speak on behalf of those in their 20s and 30s. So we're going to begin this Tuesday with our keyword news. Our keyword for this Wednesday is stabbing. The news of an elementary school teacher allegedly stabbing a 7-year-old student to death has left South Korea in shock. On Monday afternoon, police found both the teacher, a woman in her 40s, and the young girl with the stab wounds inside a classroom at an elementary school in Daejeon City. The girl, who sustained severe injuries to her neck and face, was rushed to the hospital but later died due to excessive bleeding. The teacher, who also had stab wounds that authorities believe were self-inflicted, reportedly admitted to stabbing the child before undergoing surgery. And according to the Daejeon Seobu police station, the teacher, who remains hospitalized, told the police her motive. So something that shouldn't have happened here in the country. So Kyun, could you please tell us what she said and what we know about her so far?
Right, I was very terrified to hear the news yesterday.
Right.
So the teacher, who had been suffering from depression back in 2018, decided to take a 6-month leave last December. But she actually made an early return, and only 3 days into work, she felt very frustrated because she was left out from a class by the deputy principal. And in a statement to the police, this was her motive to go outside the school to buy a weapon, come back, and just give it this random urge to kill any one student who left the classroom last. So it had to be that 7-year-old girl. So she was choked and stabbed. And the teacher tried to take away her own life, but she failed to do so. So currently she's in intensive care unit, unable to speak for further questioning. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens next in terms of a punishment, and just in the hope that these kind of incidents should never, ever happen again here in Korea, especially. Yeah.
Definitely. And the Daejeon Metropolitan Office of Education has come under scrutiny following this tragedy regarding possible preemptive measures. So could you tell us why this agency has been under criticism, Cheska?
Yeah, first of all, just like Ki-hoon mentioned, I think this news is absolutely tragic, and it tore my heart apart when I read about it. But one of the issues that did come to surface, as you mentioned, was actually the lack of involvement or intervention from the Office of Education in Daejeon. So according to the news report, teacher had repeatedly filed for sick leaves regarding her mental health, very specifically. And even in this particular case, as Ki-hoon mentioned, she actually returned earlier than she had filed for. So she filed for, I think, a 6-month leave, but only came back only in 20 days. And she has been reported to have demonstrated violent behaviors to her fellow teachers, but there were no cases filed or ongoing investigation regarding the fit for her to remain in the school. So there are some concerns over whether earlier intervention in one way or another could have prevented or at least led to a different outcome in this case. However, also given the nature of this crime in that it was a non-target specific, as Kyun mentioned, she just wanted to hurt someone committed by a mentally unstable person, it may have been very difficult to accurately predict when and how and exactly why she would have done something like this.
Right, this is indeed a very horrific and devastating incident. Our hearts are with the family members of the victim. And on Tuesday, the Daejeon Police Agency announced that an arrest warrant and a search and seizure warrant had been issued for the teacher. And authorities will take her into custody as she recovers from surgery. And that was our keyword news for this Wednesday. So we're now going to move on to our main discussion of the day. Wednesday means it's time to explore the latest lifestyle trends among the younger generation. Take a look at the screen to find out more. Here's a question for you. Who does the household chores in your home, from laundry, cooking, and cleaning to yard work and car maintenance? In the past, the focus was on sharing responsibilities within the household. But today, a growing number of young people are outsourcing these tasks to professional services instead of doing them themselves. What's driving this shift? So today we're going to talk about house chores that kind of feel like they're never ending. So starting off, I would like to ask our panelists, are you responsible for a lot of housework yourself?
Yeah, I'm just going to channel the energy a little bit and say yes, but
I think that just sums up everything.
Yeah, that pretty much sums up everything. Every crumb, every hair shed, every dust in my home is my responsibility. And I've been living alone for quite some time. So even in college in the States, I had to manage my own dormitory. So I have learned and acquired skills to run my own household. But it almost feels like, because I've been with the house chores for such a long time, it almost feels like it's like my partner in crime, but we also have to clean up together. So we like go hand in hand, yeah.
All right, then what about you, Yoon?
I'm kind of on the same page as Cheska because I live with my brother, not with my parents. And ever since we moved in together, we kind of agreed from the beginning to do to share the household chores.
Okay.
But we did have a lot of arguments in the beginning as to like who did more, who did less, and we were always having just brother fights. But we kind of grew out of it and just decided, you know what, let's be more understanding. Whoever spends more time at home automatically does more housework.
Okay.
But one thing for sure that we've split is that my brother does the bathroom cleaning on a weekly basis. I'm more in charge of the kitchen and the fridge area because I'm into cooking. But other than that, I pretty much do most of the housework.
Because you stay home longer?
That as well, but I just like to see a clean house when I come home after work. Yeah.
That sounds quite fair and square.
And very different to you, Eugene.
Yes, very different to me because I live with my parents. Sorry, Mom. But
Sorry, Mom.
Thanks, Mom.
Thanks, Mom.
I miss you, Mom.
But it seems like our generation is redefining the concept of household chores, which we are going to talk in depth today. Because instead of seeing them as a personal duty, more young people are opting for convenience and efficiency by hiring professionals. So for example, here in Korea, we're seeing a growing number of specialized housekeeping services that go beyond traditional housekeepers. For example, these services handle specific tasks such as washing, folding, and delivering laundry straight to your doorstep, making daily chores burden-free, except for the fact that you have to pay for them. So Cheska, before we came on here, we talked about how you're an avid user of these services. So could you give us some examples and kind of give our viewers a picture of what these services look like?
They are most certainly burden-free, but they're not financial cost-free. Yes, and in fact, I am the perfect MZer for today's topic, as I am the very consumer and the active user of these kind of services. I use the traditional like housekeeping and cleaning services, but beyond the actual cleaner visit services, there are products that are becoming, quote, smarter and much more helpful. So there are robot vacuum cleaners, washing machines that sort of run on its own and dry on its own, dishwashers that can be programmed to perform certain tasks automatically. And nowadays, I was very shocked, but they even have like mop or sweepers that empty themselves.
Really? How smart?
They're smarter than me, I think. And the common thing in all these smart gadgets is that it is requiring less and less human labor involvement. And even for repairs and after service of these gadgets, they have a so-called like a subscription repair plan. So within those time, you can get a repair during the plan years as much as needed. So it's becoming a lot of automatic and becoming less and less human involvement and becoming very, very smart and user-friendly for a lot of people like ourselves,
I am quite tempted to use this service though. Maybe I shall try it in the near future. But Yoon, I also want to ask you, how big of a trend has this become? Could you please tell us more?
Right, so as the number of single-person households are increasing rapidly among the MZ generation, more people are outsourcing household chores like cleaning and laundry and so on. In fact, domestic cleaning service companies have experienced unprecedented growth over recent years. And one cleaning platform in Korea reported a 15% monthly increase in users, and 40% of them were from the MZ generation, and they saw an overall of 15% increase compared to the previous year. So as a result, we're seeing various different services emerge. For example, there's a service that came out recently where they handle the disposal of delivery food containers, plastic containers, because a lot of people who live by themselves tend to order in food instead of cooking at home, and this leaves them with a lot of plastic containers and packaging, and if you don't throw them out right away, it just tends to pile up very quickly, and
which becomes a big headache.
Becomes a huge headache. You're like, oh, I can't do this. So what they do is they use these services at an affordable price, and they would just wash all the containers and clean it out for you.
Wow, very
is it like a collecting?
Yes, they collect the fee and they clean the fee. Because in Korea, you have to clean all the disposals and you have to recycle it accordingly. So it could become a bit of a work.
Very fascinating. Now, in short, a major difference between now and the past is that before for most families, household chores were strictly managed within the home by those living together. So, for example, if you were living by yourself, that means you were in charge of it all. But today, paying for these services that our panelists mentioned has become an acceptable, even preferred option. So I want to ask you, what do you think has led to this change in mindset?
Our generation really value convenience and efficiency, and I think this has really led on to our use of these cleaning services as they're considered to have high time cost effectiveness. So many people are not really accustomed to cleaning at home compared to our parents' generation. So they find it more worthwhile to actually pay for these services, outsourcing these kind of cleaning services, so that they can save time to study, work, or just enjoy their hobbies in general. And in fact, among single-person households living in small studio apartments, the demand for cleaning services have surged because a 2-hour cleaning service typically will cost you around 40,000 Korean won, and they perceive it as a very more convenient and efficient way of actually getting the housework done instead of doing them themselves, because they find it very difficult. It takes a lot of time and effort. So they'll rather actually pay for these services than do it on their own.
So they're thinking that this is an okay deal, a not bad deal.
Definitely, yeah.
Then I want to ask you the same question, Cheska, because you are using these services. Can you relate to these reasons?
I actually can, and I would like to give a little bit more reasons, perhaps, behind why some people might use it, including my own. I told you earlier that I'm the perfect MZer that represents this trend, and I have been actively using house cleaning service for almost a year now, and I use it about once every month or two. So between those times, I do clean it myself. But last year, every week before going on like international trips, I would pre-book these cleaning services so that I can get it cleaned. And I would use it during particularly busy seasons so that I can focus entirely on my work or things that I need to take care of. And
that's nice.
It is really nice. And as Yoon mentioned, the time cost benefit analysis plays a really huge part in these decision process, because our generation sees value in time slightly, I would say, differently, or place weight differently than the previous generation. Because in our generation, I feel like we're always competing or trying to chase time because everybody's moving so quickly. So having to do a house chore when you have so much work to do, or when you don't have enough time to fully take care of yourself, you really want to prioritize a little differently. And I think that's when the money versus time sort of come into play. And I also want to add something really interesting that some of our viewers might agree with. Before using these house chore services, I didn't see much value in the skill of cleaning. But after paying for these services and seeing these people come and, literally run my house down, it elevated the value.
They become more visible, right?
Exactly. They become visible, and this skill became a commodity that can be traded in the market for a certain price. So it actually elevated the value of house chores for me, that traditionally would be something that you just have to do and everyone has to do.
Couldn't agree with you more. So from cleaning to doing the laundry and just dishwashing or everything, these services are providing making household labor more efficient and convenient for the users. Now, to find out more, we also asked our viewers which household tasks they would be most willing to outsource. Let's check out some of their responses. So we conducted a poll through our Arirang News YouTube channel. The question was, which household chore would you pay to avoid? Among the 313 votes, 64% chose cleaning, followed by laundry, 19%, and 17% dishwashing. We're going to take a look at some comments now. Our first comment for this Wednesday, Pak Day on 8-5, cleaning, because then you can have your house as clean as you like, and it is very important to have a pleasant place to rest. Jack Spar Pine 3217 says cooking. Roddy Russell Jr. 93. I remember moving to a new apartment with a dishwasher and being so happy that my mother said, no, you still have to wash them. Oh, the disappointment.
Oh, the disappointment.
Thank you for sharing our opinions. And up next, we're going to talk to an expert on why young people are shifting towards using these services more in depth. We'll be back after this short break.
Jen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search our channel Arirang News. Click Community and leave a comment down below. Make a new type of news with us.
And joining us on this Wednesday is Alex Barash, Associate Professor of Marketing at the University of Colorado at Boulder. Welcome back to the show, Professor.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. So, Professor, we want to ask you the same question that I asked to our panelists. Are we seeing a similar rise in demand for housekeeping services? And could you please tell us examples in other countries?
Sure. Yeah, it's definitely not just happening in Korea. It's a global trend, and we're seeing a major kind of surge in the demand for these services. Definitely in the U.S. too. I'll also mention countries like Japan and China, parts of Europe, where there are large urban populations. We're seeing the growth in the U.S. in mostly major cities, and that makes sense, right? Some of the things you guys mentioned. More people who live in small apartments, clutter builds up. You don't want to see that around, and so that's driving some of that growth. Technology is also playing a huge role because, at least in the U.S., and I've read about a little bit of this in Europe too. The apps and the online booking services are just making it so much easier to access this service. And I don't want to deal with an agency or a long-term contract. I want to do it when I want to do it, and so that's really a big factor for this growth across the world.
You know, Professor, especially here in South Korea, as we discussed in the studio this morning, we're actually seeing more young people make up the demographic of using these housekeeping services. And you mentioned something really important, the use of apps and these gadgets. But what do you think is fueling this demand? Are there any other reasons?
Yeah, and you guys have touched on some great points already. So I really liked your perspective about the value and the time money trade-offs. But I'll also just mention a few other things. So first of all, and this is related, people are just busier compared to previous generations. Young people work more. We just work longer hours, and we want to spend our free time on something else besides cleaning. So we want to rest. We care about social relationships and also personal projects and hobbies. Another factor is remote work. You know, as more younger professionals work from home, you notice when there's clutter and mess in your office, and that's going to motivate people to, you know, keep that space clean. And perhaps I'd say the most interesting thing I thought of is actually more of a cultural shift in attitudes. I think actually, that third quote that you provided from that viewer really spoke to that. This idea that you know, in the past, cleaning was like a really important responsibility, and you know, as a human, you've got to do these things. It's, you know, part of your you know, the buy-in to being an adult, I guess. And I think now we just see this shift where outsourcing chores, whether that's, you know, housekeeping and laundry. I'd also add in there grocery deliveries, meal prep. All of this is just seen more as a smart thing to do, a way to find time for important things, or maybe your own well-being. I've seen people, you know, cut out on things like shopping or eating out because they want to be able to prioritize this self-care, and getting somebody else to clean your spaces is part of that. So it's just not a taboo anymore. I think that's a really important factor, and that's a factor that's not specific to Korea. I'd say that's a really kind of global phenomenon, a shift that everybody can relate to.
Professor, do you expect this trend to continue growing? If so, in what ways? Could you just briefly tell us, because we're a little pressed in time? Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's definitely going to grow. We're going to see more customized services. At least in my town here, I see a lot of eco-friendly options because people care about sustainability. Affordability is going to get better as there's more providers and more competition. And then your point about robots, I mean, technology is just going to get better. So we're just going to have AI-driven booking systems and just more access in general to these things. So I definitely think it's going to continue.
All right, Professor Barash, thank you so much for your time today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, so ending off with more people using housekeeping services and these services now being viewed as a smart thing, not a taboo or something that's wasteful. Do you think that this trend will continue? What do you think?
Yeah, just briefly, as Professor mentioned, I do think it's going to continue, but more specifically, this field can very much expand, not just for our generation, but for disabled population, and even the growing elderly demographic that we will be a part of. And having a clean and organized home really affects you both, mentally, physically, and economically. So I do hope these services do continue.
And where do you see the future of household labor heading to?
I agree with the professor and, of course, Cheska, but I personally like cleaning myself, and it really helps me to just relieve stress, reorganize my thoughts, and just being in a very clean environment where I can actually physically be able to clean my house just makes me feel a bit more alive at home. Because, many people spend a long time at home, and I want it to be in a very happy, kind of clean, satisfying environment. So if I can do it on my own without extra expenses, I will continue to do it.
Would you mind coming to my home and doing it?
You got to pay me a lot.
We'll talk about that later.
All right, and that wraps up this episode of News Generation, but we will be back tomorrow morning at 10:30 a.m. Korea time. Special thanks to Cheska Dain, huh?
Pleasure's always mine. Thank you.
Thank you, and fuck you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for staying with us, and hope you have a wonderful Wednesday. We are News Generation.